Okay guys, so we're gonna talk about bed adhesion today. I usually don't give any tip videos like this, and I don't really record YouTube videos, so this is gonna be just unedited raw version of me helping you guys out. Anybody who uses a 3D printer of any kind. I'm a live streamer, so I don't really hang out with YouTube and make any sort of videos, but since I've had a couple of years of experience 3D printing, I'm gonna give you a little tip that hopefully some of you are gonna find helpful. So just a little history of before you say, oh, look at this idiot, there's another idiot creating a video of how to 3D print stuff. But I have a lot of experience 3D printing. I've owned a CR10S for about 3 years now, and if you look at this channel, you'll probably see a couple of videos. I make stuff like this. This is custom rim for sim racing games, and this one is entirely 3D printed, and this is the one I've been using for a while, and I actually sell this kind of stuff. So, you know, before you just close my video, just hear me out here. I'm trying to help you guys. The biggest problem with 3D printing that a lot of people go through is obviously bed adhesion, and you get those warping happening on even the simplest parts like this. You know, this is one of the paddle shifters that go on one of these rims. So I'm sure a lot of you who's watching this video has had, you know, a 2-day print. You know, you're like turn it on and you're like staring at it like, oh my god, yes. And then you go to sleep. You come back in the morning to find out that one of the sides of your 24-hour print has warped, and then the whole print is ruined. So yeah, build bed adhesion, man. So I've gone through a lot of different build surface or build plate surfaces. I've tried PEI, TH3D, there's the blue one that they sell. I've tried the Creality magnetic ones. The flex plates. One that I use the most over my, I don't know, a few years of 3D printing is this. This is basically a mirror, and then I have a PEI surface that's glued on top of it. And this has been my go-to build plate for the longest time. This works fairly well. You have to keep on cleaning it constantly, and the biggest issue I have with this build plate is a lot of times taking big prints off can be a pain in the ass. So you always have to go back to the scraper. You know, you just gotta like jam it in there and like try to pop it. And so the thing is, I hate using this friggin' thing, because the reason why, whenever you try to do projects like these, like this rim here, when you use the scraper, a lot of times it ruins that nice finish of your print at the bottom side of it. So even if you pop it off pretty easily, a lot of times it scrapes it, and a lot of times you actually scrape the PEI. So I have a lot of scratches because of using this thing. I absolutely despise using this tool, and I've cut myself a few times using it. I honestly think that this is one of the worst things that can be used when it comes to 3D printing. But a lot of times you have no choice. You have to like go to one of these. So now that the last couple of weeks, you know, I usually hang out a lot around forums and you know, those fake Facebook group chats for like Creality printers. And there's always when people ask questions, oh, what kind of build plate do you guys use? What are the settings? Blah blah blah. There's always one guy that always says, I just print on bare glass, man, and that's all I ever use. And then, you know, you always hear these things, and I tried them a few times on bare glass, and it never really worked. Like, as soon as I start printing on bare glass, almost like 3 layers later, you see warping right away, and you just like forget it. So to me, this was almost like a myth for the longest time. And then a few times I went back and I watched, I can't remember exactly, there's videos on YouTube. I always watch like these tutorials on YouTube, what people post, you know. And then I've seen a few guys still print on bare glass. So I always went back and thought, well, how the hell are they doing it? So there must be some way. And I only print with PLA. I don't do ABS. I don't do none of that. I always use PLA Plus. For most of my projects, I just use PLA Plus. It's the best material for me. It prints great. It's strong as ABS. The only problem is the melting temperature is still fairly low, but that's not a problem for the things I do. So I went back on trying out how to print on bare glass again, and it works, man. I'm telling you, I'm never going back to anything else. The beauty of printing on bare glass is I've never, if you do it right, I've never had anything stick so well as bare glass if you just follow these little tips that I'm gonna give you on how to do it. So to get like what I use for the bare glass, I just go to IKEA, and they sell 4 of these mirrors that are 300 by 300. They sell 4 of them for about like $9 Canadian. They're super cheap. And I mean, another biggest problem with these PLA plates, like I've had Loctite. That one's really good, but the problem is Loctite. I would never print anything big on Loctite because you'll never gonna take it off. You know, Build Tack and PEI, all of these things work, but there's nothing as good as a bare glass that I've had experience with. And so this is basically a IKEA mirror that I have, you know, used for my PEI sheet that I glued on. These go, like I said, for $9 in IKEA. If you don't have IKEA, you can probably buy them at your local hardware store or something like that. And so the number one thing about, you probably have heard this before, but for best adhesion for your print, the number one thing is your first layer settings. So this is like probably 80% of the problems that people have comes from really bad first layer settings. So I'll give you just I'm not gonna open up my slicer settings or anything like that, but I can give you, because if you've been using 3D like a slicer software, you'll know what I'm talking about. So the first thing that I always do is if you're let's say printing at 2.2 of a millimeter, my first layer height has to be always lower. So about a 70%, 70 to 80% the height of my actual layer height. So it's if it's 0.2, it'll be 1.16 or something like that for the first layer. So that's number one. The second thing, on your printer, you can also always get the custom firmware that allows you to use these what they call baby steps. The problem is, like, if you don't have I personally don't have the automatic bed leveling, any of those things that they sell. I haven't really modded my printer up to that point, so I still use just the paper like everyone else. But what baby steps does is you can adjust on the fly the height of your nozzles. So this is one thing that it's so important to have on your printer if you don't have the auto leveling. Otherwise, you'll have to go back and try to make it tighter. You know, paper, when you're leveling with your paper, you're gonna have to manually level the bed even lower to make the first print, because the first line, when the first line is going down, it has to be squished a little bit. This is also like super important, and you probably read it like a million times on everyone else's like tutorials and stuff, but it has to squish on the bare glass, especially. It has to be squished down. So as it's printing, and when the print is done, when you turn it over, you should almost not even see where the lines connect. Like when the lines print next to each other like this, that seam should almost not be visible. That's how like squished it has to be. The reason why baby steps are great, because you can do, let's say, a bit of a skirt printing, and as the skirt is happening, so it's like 2 or 3 lines on the outer perimeter of your object, you can actually adjust it on the fly to actually lower your nozzle exactly the way you want it to be. So as it's printing slowly, you basically just lower it, keep lowering it, and until you hit the sweet spot, right? And then you can do every print. Even if your bed gets out of level, you can always do this. Like, you can just do baby steps and just lower it, and it's gonna be perfect every single time. So that's number one thing. You have to squish it and have this baby step. It's really helpful to have this on your printer. Like, there's custom firmware you can get from TH3D for free. Basically, if you have one of those old CR10 printers, which, you know what I mean, like the blue screen with the little knob, LCD with the little knob, and then you just adjust this. You can access any of those settings once you install the custom firmware. So that's one thing. So the first layer again. So on the first layer, so the biggest thing is the second option. Yeah. So now going back to this, the second thing that I found really helpful is I put my bed, and this is only for PLA because I only print on PLA. The first layer temperature, I always put 70 degrees, so 70 Celsius for the bed temperature. And then as soon as it jumps on the second layer, I go back to 50 degrees. What I've noticed is whenever you go like 60, 70, like, you know, that's like the point, melting point of the PLA. If you still keep it at that high, the forces of pulling the PLA, you know, how everything tries to warp, because the plastic is at that point where it's still really soft, it's just gonna lift it. So the best thing to do is actually the second layer in your slicer settings, put it on a 50 Celsius. That way, so once the first one is printed, it's gonna cool off down to like 50, and then it's gonna be hard enough that it can't just be like pulled off, but it's gonna be still hot enough to still stick to the build plate. This is something that I've, again, from trial and error from many prints, and I realized that this works. Also, since you're printing on PLA, max on the first layer, make sure the first layer prints really slow, like super slow. I print my first layer on 10 millimeters per second. I forget what it's in a slicer, but it's usually people use 50 for the rest of the print. I use 10 for the first layer, so super slow. This is also really important. And then no fan on the first layer, so the cooling fan should be off. And then the second, third layer, you can go max out right away. On a PLA, there's no problem. You should always max out your cooling, nozzle cooling, because a lot of times warping happens because that plastic is cooling way too slow. And then what happens is, you know, the whole thermal science behind it, you know, the bottom part stays too warm for too long, and it's just a lot of pulling and twisting starts happening. So if you can cool that plastic as soon as you can, as soon as it gets printed, you're gonna minimize the warping. But then going back to the glass, so after the bed temperature, this is another reason why a lot of people have failed, and I've been failing to print on bare glass, is it has to be squeaky clean. And you know, when you're cleaning glass, like window or something like that, if it doesn't squeak, it's not clean. This is like the most important tip that you can that is super important. Otherwise the print's not gonna work. It's just gonna start warping right away. So get, you know, just a regular rug that you have or something, you know, just even a paper towel can work. And then you can use glass cleaner, like some expensive glass cleaner. I personally just get was it Epsom alcohol? You can buy those really cheap at the store, like a rubbing alcohol. And then I put it half and half in one of these things. Buy one of these spray bottles at your dollar store for like $1. So I put half water, half alcohol, and then what I do is I just spray on it, and then I take a piece of paper, or like paper towel or some sort of small towel, and I keep rubbing it. And you have to rub hard until it squeaks. And I'm honestly, I'm not. This is like super important, because if it doesn't squeak, it's still dirty. So the number one, that's the second most important thing to for stuff to stick on bare glasses has to be super clean. If it's not clean, forget it. It's just gonna lift right away. You're just gonna keep on failing every single time. And then, so once it's clean, you're not gonna have any issues. If you follow all these steps, you can forget about your PEI surfaces or build tack or flex plates. It's always gonna work every single time. Trust me, I've been printing for so long. This is the best thing that I've ever used ever for a build plate. And the beauty about the glass surface, you'll see even if it cools down, you won't be able to detach it. It actually sticks so hard. I've never had anything stick so well as bare glass. But the trick to actually lift any print off of the glass is take the same alcohol and water mix and spray on top of your print, and then just wait for a few seconds. I think there's a YouTube video of somebody that made it. And as you spray it on, just wait for a couple of minutes, and you can hear the cracking happening on the spot. So what's happening? It's basically your print is lifting as this thing is basically getting into all this little, the gaps between the print and the glass, and it just lifts right off after a couple of minutes. And you never have to use this freaking thing ever again. So, and then another thing that I know a lot of people hate about printing on glass is you get that glass finish, like super glossy finish. The easiest thing to get rid of that, if you want to, a lot of people prefer matte finish to their prints. Just take one of the, high grain, or really, is it low or high? I'm not sure, but like the sandpaper, just take like a 600 grain or something like that, or even 800, and just brush it lightly on your print. It takes like honestly a minute to turn it from a glossy to a matte finish. Or you can just buy one of these at your local store. This is a brand, like it's a Rust-Oleum, and it's a matte clear finish. Just spray it 1 or 2 coats, done. It's gonna look perfectly matte, and it's gonna look perfect every single time. But anyways, that's basically it. If you follow these simple steps, you will never ever have to buy any of those expensive build plates ever again. Trust me, it works the best I've ever tried of any of them. And sorry for not editing the video. This is, I'm really lazy. I don't really like to do these videos on YouTube. I just live stream on Twitch. So I just wanted to do this little tutorial for you guys to help all those people out there that have been struggled for years with the build plate adhesion. And yeah, anyways, enjoy, and thanks for watching. Bye.